Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey, at 8 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, February 7, 2012, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the Board and to transact any other business to come properly before the Board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield Board of Education on Friday, February 3, 2012, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Alternative Press, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of the meeting. With that, Vince, roll call.
Mr. Matesic?
Here.
Mr. Finn?
Here.
Ms. Carey?
Here.
Mrs. Clancy?
Here.
Mr. Friedman?
Here.
Ms. Kirstead?
Here.
Mrs. Lights?
Here.
Mr. Slater?
Here.
Mrs. Oley?
All right. Mr. Finn.
Please join me in a flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements. Mitch, start over here.
Sure. Start with athletics here. The Westfield High School girls swim team, this won't come as much of a surprise, they just keep winning. They won their 20th consecutive county championship on January 29th. The relay team of Lauren Ball, Caroline Baldwin, Sarah Cronin, and Ellie Reinhardt broke the high school and tournament records in both the 200 and 400 freestyle. The boys swim team garnered their 57th county title in the 61 years history of the meet. Congratulations to our swimmers on these amazing accomplishments. In wrestling, Mike there you go. Won his 100th match the last weekend in January. Only two other wrestlers in the rich history of wrestling in Westfield have attained this incredible milestone. Congratulations to all.
Kindergarten registration. Lincoln School has announced an additional morning date for kindergarten registration on Tuesday, March 6th from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Please call the school to make a reservation, and registration forms are available on the Lincoln School website.
I have an announcement about food services. Beginning February 14th at the high school and on the 15th at our two intermediate schools, our food service provider, Chartwells, will be instituting an online payment system for student dining. Information about the new system, called NutriKids, is being emailed to all parents in our intermediate and secondary schools and high school. Parents can take advantage of depositing money into a student's account. Besides the convenience of handling less cash, there will be no more meal cards or rosters necessary for free, reduced, and prepaid meal accountability. The information is already noted in the system, and the meal is processed just as any other student without any special indication. This is also great news for those students who have felt uncomfortable in the past about using a meal card or stating their name at the registers. We look forward to that new system.
Thank you. Mark?
The Education Fund of Westfield is hosting Rock for Schools on Saturday, February 11th at from 5:30 to 8:30 at the Crossroads in Garwood. Musical entertainment and refreshments will be included in the ticket price. For more information, please check online at www.westfieldnj.com/edfund. The Ed Fund provides grants to teachers to enhance instruction at our schools, and we are grateful for their continued support.
This is about special education. On February 15th, the Special Education Parents Committee of the Parent Teacher Council will present How to Help Your Child Become a Better Writer at 7:30 p.m. in the library of Edison Intermediate School. The guest speaker will be Dr. Francie Matthews, Director of Academic Success Associates. This presentation is appropriate for parents of children in 2nd to 8th grade.
Okay, I have a school closing announcement. The Westfield Public Schools will be closed Friday, February 17th through Tuesday, February 21st in observance of President Washington's and Lincoln's birthdays. A staff in-service day will be held on Tuesday, February 21st.
All right, and the next Board of Education meeting will be Tuesday, February 28th, and the agenda will include a discussion of technology. With that, I'd like to recognize the public for agenda items only, and I'd like to specifically point out that we had asked the public to please let us know your thoughts on moving the school elections to November, so now would be an appropriate time to do that.
Hi, Gary McCready, Mohican Drive. I did watch the last meeting on the web, of course, and I decided to take up the challenge. So, moving the election date. What would we be scared of, perhaps? I'd say, I don't know, maybe a few possible ghosts. Let's say the ghost of government past. What's happened, such as 5% funding cuts, fund balances taken away, first a 4% and then a 2% cap limit on spending. County superimposed budget reviews. These are all things that, for the most part, have sprung up with very little notice by the state government to impose restrictions on school districts. So, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you really might be scared of the ghost of government future, such as what might happen next that would limit the budget, limit how we could fund our schools, that if you did move the budget vote, if any, to November, that you would not be able to raise additional cash, you would not be able to appeal to the public to restore some of the funding or to lift some of the restrictions that were cut. Again, that is the main risk that you're looking at, is that whatever the state decides that will be the rules, and when you go through your yearly budget review, you can't change them. You just have to live by them. So that's the risk that you're taking. And another risk, which I'm not sure has really been viewed that much, is the new filing deadline for Board of Education candidates. I'm not sure whether it's in June or July, but that's like 4 or 5 months ahead of the actual, vote for the candidates. Right at the end of the year, where people really aren't thinking that much about school anymore, so you have to think about, will you really get a good selection of candidates, a good selection of engaged people, as you have traditionally had in the middle of the school year, right at the end of it, to file for an election 4 or 5 months in advance. That's a risk, but let's look at the ghost of the government present. What you have now is a yearly exercise of going through a lot of paperwork, a lot of graphs, a lot of different ways to try to explain the school budget, and that's just to board members, let alone the public. If you're not on the finance committee, it's really hard to get a good grasp of where all those numbers are coming from, even after they're presented. You have to then go out and try to convince the public that they should support the budget, that they should trust you, that they shouldn't micromanage, and it's never been an easy thing because you're essentially going out there and campaigning for higher taxes. Never something that's easy. So, you might fear what might be coming down in the future, but looking at it another way, could over 200 school districts so far in New Jersey be wrong in terms of their moving their budget vote to eliminating their budget vote and moving the election to November? It doesn't look like it, and I see sort of a secondary benefit of, if you did actually have what I would call a real second question, a real reason to increase the budget line. The fear had always been in the past, like, well, if you put in 2 reasons to increase taxes, the public might vote down one or both, but now you could put that question in November, and maybe have a more reasoned discussion as to why people should go out and vote for it. But if they vote it down, so what? You can just include that in the regular budget a few months after the November vote. So, as much as I love trying to figure out how to present those numbers to the public in a very, informed and understanding fashion, I would say, forget about it. get rid of the budget vote, move the election to November.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? All right. Oh, one.
On the vote topic or on any other matter?
Any other matter that is on the agenda?
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no one else, we'll go into our reports for the evening. The first report is a continued discussion for moving the school election to November. Ms. Carey.
Okay. So 2 weeks ago, the board agreed to solicit community input before we decided whether or not to vote on a resolution to move the annual school election to November and eliminate the vote on school budgets kept under the 2% tax levy cap. The district, tonight I want to report on the steps the district has taken to reach out to the community. First, board members have raised the topic at the Jefferson PTO meeting, the McKinley PTO meeting, the PTC General Membership meeting, and the PTO President's meeting. The topic was covered by the Leader, Patch, and the Alternative Press. The PowerPoint presentation, which was presented last time we met and presented the pros and cons of moving the election, was posted on our website. Dr. Dolan's synopsis of our last meeting was emailed to our subscribers and posted online. An announcement was sent to all school newsletters requesting parent input, and a letter to the editor ran in the Leader last week. After this outreach, the board received only 14 emails, 10 in favor of moving the election and 4 opposed. And there was actually a letter in the Leader also opposing the move. And now we've had the board member from the past also come and present his views. So since Governor Christie signed the election law on January 17th, the legislation committee of the board has met 3 times to discuss the pros and cons of moving the election and how to keep the community's voice in the budget process. The full board met on January 24th and publicly discussed these issues as well. We have reached out to our fellow board members in other communities to exchange ideas and points of view, and we have been talking to our friends and neighbors. At this point, 228 other districts have voted to move the election to November. Therefore, after careful consideration, the Legislation Committee is recommending to the full board tonight that the election be moved to November with the understanding that the board will continue to provide the community with budget information as we always have, and that we welcome public discussion. The community will no longer have a vote on the budget, but they will continue to have a voice. We urge the public to follow our budget presentations, and we welcome your thoughts and opinions. Just to clarify for any members of the public who are considering a potential run for the board, candidate petitions will now be due in June. And as Gary points out, it is a longer lead time than we are used to. And I think we as a board will have to do due diligence in trying to get the word out to make sure that people know that they need to get their petition in June. I think it's June 5th. Right, June 5th. And then the public will vote on board members, and we will have four seats up for vote in November because Gretchen is just filling in at this point. All sitting board members who are up for re-election will serve until January, and that is when the new board will be organized. So before I ask the board to consider a resolution, I'd just like to ask board members if there are any other questions or comments that we want to make from the board table. Seeing none, I will read out the resolution for the folks at home. Resolution to eliminate the vote on the annual budget and to move the election of school board members to the general election in November. Whereas Public Law S. 3148, Laws of 2012, provides that a local school district may adopt a resolution to eliminate the vote on its annual school budget that is within the statutory cap imposed by the state of New Jersey, and whereas the above legislation provides that the above action would require districts to hold their annual election for school board members in November during the regular general election, and whereas the Westville Board of Education believes that school board members' elections in November will attract a far greater number of voters than typically vote in April elections, and whereas the Westfield Board of Education believes that dispensing with annual school budget votes will save taxpayer dollars, and whereas the Westfield Board of Education believes that the elimination of the vote on the school budget and the movement of the board member election to November is in the best interest of the Westfield community, and whereas the Westfield Board of Education understands that this decision shall remain in effect for a minimum of 4 years. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Westville Board of Education does hereby determine that it will eliminate the vote on its annual school budget, which shall be within the statutory cap, and become effective for the 2012-2013 budget. And be it further resolved that the Westville Board of Education does hereby determine that the election of school board members will occur at the annual general election in November 2012.
Second.
Dave, second.
Discussion? Comments? Roll call?
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Mr. Matesic?
Yes.
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Kerstad?
Yes.
Mrs. Lights?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Well done. Thank you. Turn next to the banner program at the athletic fields. Roseanne.
As many of you know, the boosters are very supportive of our student athletes and of our entire athletic program. As a way to provide even more support, the Banners wanted to create a banner program. And that would entail advertising at Keller Stadium and at the varsity baseball field. In November 2009, the board did approve a one-year pilot program with strict guidelines. The most strict were the color guide restrictions that were only to be blue and white. And while the program has been somewhat successful in that the banners have been tasteful and have not disrupted the look of the town, the boosters have had some difficulty really executing their vision because of the color restrictions. Many national corporations who are in town have voiced interest in utilizing the banner program, but have not been able to because of the color restrictions. So Paul Haru, who is the president of the boosters, came to us to ask us to relook at our color restrictions. And the policy committee had an extensive discussion 2 weeks ago, and the policy committee would like to recommend to the full board that we extend another year pilot, but lifting the color restrictions. And Paul is here today to talk more specifically about the boosters' vision and their program.
Thank you, Roseanne. You've made my presentation for me.
Oh,
I certainly want to thank you for acting so quickly. I emailed Jane, and Jane said, "Oh, I'm going to a meeting, tomorrow, good timing," and then she got me in touch with you. So thank you very much to you and the policy committee for acting so quickly on this. And I do want to thank, on behalf of the boosters, the full Board of Education for your great support of Westfield sports and of the boosters' efforts over the years. It's a great partnership that we've had. We really appreciate your support. We appreciate supporting you as well. So a little point of correction on the record. I am not the president of the Boosters Association, though so that is Mike Helfand. He is the president, doing a great job, so I'm not replacing Mike in case he's listening to this broadcast.
Just a quick background on the boosters, if you will, and I have the PowerPoint presentation I've handed out to you. We've been around for 65 years. I haven't personally, but the boosters have been around for 65 years, since 1945, for the sole dedication of enhancing Westfield sports, providing additional materials and supplies and what have you that is not typically covered in the school budget, but that helps enhance the sports experience, helps support the trainers, the coaches, and particularly our athletes. We also do provide 20 to 25 athletic scholarships each year to accomplished student athletes, and that's something that's done at our all-sports dinner. There's 52 volunteers that make up the Boosters Association. I don't know where that number came from, but sometime in 1945 they decided 52 was good. But that, in conjunction with the generous support of the Westfield community, which we are always enjoying, as well as the support of the Board of Education, we really, that is our formula for success. So, our pilot program, as was noted by Roseanne, was approved. We launched the banner program for effective in 2011. I have to say the initial response was good. We were successful in raising about $15,000. We had 4 particular sponsors that signed up on boosters, 2 for the premium level and then 2 for the gold level. And so that was good. So even within the restrictions that we had, we still found some interest, and I would say that typically these were certainly local participants, merchants in the area, and also in some cases long-time Westfield residents who are now in their own business here. So we've achieved our initial goal of getting some interest going. The banner program specifications are there on the 4 slides. It's a 4x8 banner. It's typically a double-sided banner. Depending on which level you subscribe, you'll either be 1 double-sided banner or 2, and it'll depend on the location. It is a 1 calendar year agreement, and there is a legal agreement that's signed and acknowledged by the sponsor itself. And then the boosters are responsible for maintaining the condition of those banners throughout the year. And if you've been at Keeler Field on those windy days, you've seen sometimes those banners do get loose. So we've had our challenges over the past year. We're looking at alternative materials to try to make them a little bit more sturdy, but so far so good. The 2012 banner program, we appreciate the recommendation for renewal. We do appreciate also the recommendation to remove the color restrictions. We love blue and white. We live by blue and white. But unfortunately, we do have some national sponsors, some national organizations that are in town that have a strong presence here who do want to participate, but unfortunately they're locked into their own corporate identity and their logos, and so they have had to decline. And I've given you a very colorful slide of just examples. These aren't committed, but these are people we're targeting. And so you get a sense of the color scheme that would be a variety. You know, we're looking to keep it within certainly the Westfield standards and decor and so on, and we will exercise that good judgment. But to the extent that we have a concern or a question, we'll be coming directly to the policy committee, to the full board, to say, hey, what about this particular color scheme? But these are just a few examples of sponsors that we are talking to, or in some cases, there are some sponsors that actually did participate. Coldwell Banker is an active sponsor already, but the blue and white seems to fit their logo. Allstate is an active sponsor, and we kind of fit with their blue and white. But beyond that, we can't get, under the current restrictions, we couldn't go any further. So that's what we're promoting. The rest of the presentation is really just for your information in terms of the specifications, the different levels of sponsorship that are available. I've also given you some photos of the locations of where these banners are located, where they are on the field. This is very much the specifications of the board during the first pilot that said, here's the limitation in terms of space, the infield fence for Kaler, particular areas of the fence around the Brewster baseball field. The idea was also we didn't want to have these banners within view of, if I recall correctly, line of sight out of the windows of any of the schools. So students aren't being advertised subliminally by staring out the window. I'm sure they're always paying attention, but we're very particular about making sure we adhere to those specifications. So our thought is at this point is if it's something that passes the approval of the board. We believe that we're going to be able to get much more success in this program. Our ultimate goal is to raise $40,000 a year. It's an ambitious goal, but we believe we can accomplish that. And as you know, 100% of those funds go directly into the Westfield Sports Program. So I do appreciate the time and attention that the board has given so far in the policy committee, and And I can answer any questions if you have any.
Are you aware, or is anybody aware of any issues that we've had with the banners? People complaining, anything?
I'm not aware of any.
No.
Yeah, and we haven't, the boosters have not received any complaints.
So, first of all, I appreciate everything the boosters do for our students, so I want to thank you for that. Will these brightly colored logos be seen from the street? Because I am concerned about changing the nature of the neighborhood. I mean, this is not a commercial part of town, as you know. I live over there, I have to go by there many times a day. And, I'm not sure that I want a big Dunkin' Donuts sign staring me in the face all the time. I mean, I just feel like it's going to change the nature of this very residential part of town if they're seen from the street. So I'm not sure if
I don't believe that they are visible from the street. I mean, when you drive by, as it would be on Rahway, it's about the only place I think where you're going to get to see them from the street. And frankly, I think the field house pretty much obscures it. I think it may be an angle.
It's pretty blocked.
It's fairly well blocked. I did purposely put the Dunkin' Donuts logo to get a reaction. I haven't solicited Dunkin' Donuts, although I have a friend of mine who owns a dirty dozen of Dunkin' Donuts in the area. So he would be one I'd tap on the shoulder because there's a lot of money in donuts. But I put it there because I'm interested also in getting a sense of, I really did put it first to see if there's somebody who would object to that. Again, we're going to target sponsors. Typically, they're the financial institutions. You see a lot of the logos are actually around banks, insurance companies, real estate agents, and so on. It tends to be the most typical, but there may be other vendors we may go to. There's a running store in town that we'll try to tag. But the question of whether or not Dunkin' Donuts, I didn't put Subway because, but I could have gotten the same reaction, right? So I don't know if there's something that the board also, that would be one, by the way, that I would have, if I had, my friend said, yeah, we want to sponsor it, I would be in front of you now saying, is this okay? Because this one takes the color scheme out to a very different, and also it's promoting a different type of business, albeit I happen to like its coffee.
Well, we've given you guidelines, right, on who can put up a banner? Or any sort of limitations around what the banners can say.
There are certain things that it's really we've been granted the authority, I guess, to exercise good judgment, conservative judgment, making sure that we are using taste and that we're not going to be putting establishments names of establishments that really aren't appropriate for a school ground. Right. And so far, we haven't gotten to that point, but we understand what our authority limitations are to come back to the board if we had a question.
And I think that's the key, to come back, probably first maybe to the administration. And so I don't think we want to sit around and talk about any one institution.
Right.
If there's a particular question about a banner and what it might look like, then bring it back.
I guess one of the questions I had for Roseanne on the email as well is to the extent that it would be easier for us if we had a direct link, whether it's Dr. Dolan or whether it's Roseanne or whomever, so that we aren't coming to the full board or maybe to a full committee, but to an individual to say, as our first outreach, to say, this is what's being proposed. What do you think? And yes, I agree, so that we're not publicly, if you will, giving an approval or rejection on something that we're not really. We'd rather head it off at the pass before we get to that point.
So it may make sense that contact be Vince as the business administrator, and then he would reach out probably in the first instance beyond Peg, if it were the board, to Roseanne as head of policies and
Or Jane.
Jane as head of facilities.
That would be great.
And
that makes it easy for us to have a point of contact.
Right.
good.
I would say that the most telling experience that we have is that we have no feedback from the public, which to me is a record of assent. There was grave concern about whether or not there would be public concerns about the banners at the first time we instituted this, and so I'm very pleased to see that they've been taken in stride, that they've been managed appropriately, and I would expect the same outcome this time. So,
yeah, on Kaler Field, we're limited between the 15-yard lines, So that kind of boxes it into less line of sight. Also, I will say that the cost for these programs, it's not for the faint of heart. It is a pricey sponsorship. And so we don't expect blanketing the 15 to 15. We don't believe that that's the kind of volume we're going to generate. And likewise, on the baseball stadium, there is a limited section of the baseball stadium that we are allowed to use, and I don't expect that we're going to be, blanketing that full section either. So,
It's interesting to note that 2 out of the 4 sponsors are Westfield High School graduates.
we like to tap those especially.
I'm not sure about the other 2, but I know for sure Frank Isolde and Ken Shiroka
Yes,
are locals, so we love our locals.
yes, we do.
All right, unless there's any other questions, Roseanne, is there a particular motion that was being set forth?
I think so.
Go ahead.
I would like to move that the board approve an additional 1-year pilot program so that the boosters can go forth without the color restriction.
Second?
I said first.
Okay. It's changed.
Do I have to say set forth therein?
We'll get it.
It said therein, I got it. Change that in before the therein.
Any other discussion, comments, questions? All right, Vince?
Ms. Kirsten?
Yes.
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Matesic?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lights?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
All right. I would just like to reiterate, I think the thanks you heard by the board members. This particular project was brought to us by you, and it's been a number of years. And, you really, I recall, you took us out there, you showed us the field, where things were going to hang, and we put on a number of limitations for good reasons. And thank you for complying with them and bringing this back with a real issue to help move it forward.
Right. Well, thank you for your support again. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, with that, we'll go to the 2012-2013 budget.
Either way, we can say.
Oh, you want us to slide down? You want me to slide down?
This chair.
Slide down.
That's it.
Sorry.
Good evening. We'd like to give you a preliminary look at the tentative proposed 2012-2013 budget. Thought we would begin by looking at the budget process that we follow. It's an extensive process over many months. In October, the budget request forms are submitted to the principals and administrators. The administrators then take about the next 6 weeks to review with their teachers and staff their budget needs and budget requests. So there's intensive review with the people actually in the classrooms. In November, late November, the budget request forms are received by the business administrator and superintendent. Then for the month of December, we review the budget requests with the administrators to review their requests and the rationale behind each of their requests. At this time, a number of budget revisions are made as necessary. In January, the budgets are compiled by the business office, and we have a number of preliminary meetings with the facilities and finance committees. This is the time that we develop a tentative budget with, of course, a lot of input from the finance and facilities committee. We look at an estimated tax impact. We do all of this without knowing a key portion of our budget, and that is our state aid. Our state aid does not come in until later in February, so we do a lot of preliminary work before that. Looking at our calendar for the calendars for the next 2 months, In February, we continue to have our Finance and Facilities Committee meetings. Today, of course, is the first board meeting where we start discussing the preliminary budget. On February 23rd, we're scheduled to receive our state aid figures. And coincidentally, we have a Finance Committee meeting that evening to look at the implications, because that will, in fact, change our budget. On the 28th, the next board meeting, we have to approve the budget, the tentative budget for submission to the county office. That has to be done, we have to submit by March 5th. Looking at March, on that March 5th date, that's the date the budget has to be submitted to the county. We also have a Finance Committee meeting that day. We have three other Finance Committee meetings designed expressly to look at the tentative budget. We also have a total of 4 board meetings in March. Each of the board meetings will be discussing the budget, a particular aspect of the budget, responding to questions. Finally, on March 27th, we have the budget, the public budget hearing, at which time we formally present the budget to the public. And then on the following day, we submit the board-approved budget to the county. A look at some of the particulars in terms of developing the budget. One of the first things we have to look at is the maximum permitted budget we're allowed under the budget cap. And to do that, we look at our revenue budgets, our tentative revenue budgets for the year. First is our general fund tax levy, which is increasing 2% over the previous year. Next, the general fund state aid. What we have budgeted here is the same amount of state aid we're receiving this year. That includes the additional $845,000 that we received in July. So that figure, of course, is subject to change. That will happen on February 23rd. Next is tuition revenue. These are 3 special education pupils we receive in district. Next is miscellaneous revenue. These are activity fees, building use fees, gate receipts, transportation fees, and so on, totaling about $300,000. Next is extraordinary aid. This is special education aid. This is a grant from the state for extraordinary special education expenses, and we anticipate that to be about $1 million in revenue. Next is state and federal grants. These are primarily special education grants. We anticipate that revenue to be about the same as this year. Next, we have some balances available in our budget, and we have decided to appropriate, we are appropriating $1,456,000 into the budget in lieu of raising taxes by that amount. We have a balance in our debt service budget. The debt service budget represents mortgage payments for previously approved building bond issue projects. That's $43,000. We do receive state aid for our debt service for the mortgage payments. That's approximately $347,000. And our debt service tax levy to make up the total debt service budget of principal and interest payments of about $2.5 million. So that total is approximately $94.6 million. And the budget that we will present to the public at the next board meeting will be within our state-imposed budget cap, which will change because of the state aid that we will receive. Looking at our proposed budget at this time, comparing it with our current budget, first is the majority of our budget, of course, are salaries. These are salaries for all of our staff members, teachers, administrators, secretaries, custodians, and so on. See a change of about $1.9 million there. Then we have certain district initiatives we'd like to establish. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
I think we'll go into detail about that in future meetings, but basically, people who watch the board meetings know that we've had district goals. This year in particular, we have district goals regarding STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and also a goal regarding preparing for the higher enrollment at the high school. So some of the district initiatives that we'll go over in a future meeting are included, having to do with that increasing enrollment at the high school and also with the STEM initiatives. Those are two of the bigger items that are listed in there.
Then our school budgets, which represent supplies and equipment for our 10 schools. Our special education budget, the majority of this represents tuition for out-of-district placements for special education pupils that we cannot accommodate within district. Most of the increase represents an anticipated increase in rates. We anticipate approximately the same number of pupils next year placed out of district. The rest of that budget represents support costs for our in-district special education pupils. Athletics, this of course includes supplies, equipment, transportation, officials, reconditioning of the equipment, our school physician, and so on. Buildings and grounds, these are supplies and equipment necessary for maintaining our buildings and grounds, and the cleaning of our buildings also includes telephone and property insurance. Reason for the decrease is our continued successful energy management program that was implemented a few years ago, keeps control on our energy costs. Also, our participation with a consortium of many of the school districts. That's how we purchase our natural gas and electricity. Consequently, we get very good rates as a result. Technology, these are all of our technology supplies and equipment. You'll see a significant increase in that budget. That represents the replacement of computers in the district that are over 7 years old. Our operations budget includes a lot: health, curriculum, legal, human resources, liability insurance, auto expenses, computer leases, office expenses, and so on. Decrease primarily due to a decrease in liability insurance. Transportation, this provides transportation for pupils in district who require transportation, and out-of-district transportation for special education pupils. Pension and health benefits, this is Social Security, pension payments for our support staff, workers' comp insurance for all staff members, health benefits employees, health benefits insurance for all employees. Decrease due to modifications made in coverage achieved at the bargaining table, coverage in our health benefits insurance, and also an increase in the contractual contributions by employees. Debt service, as I mentioned before, these are mortgage payments for our previous bond issue projects. Grants, these are our special education, federal and state grants, which we basically keep at the same level budget-wise. We are not including totals here because the total will change when we receive our state aid. So at the meeting on February 28th, we'll have a more comprehensive proposal related to the initial approval of our budget for submission to the county office. We do know, however, that our budget will be within the budget gap, and we do know the tax implications, which is on the next slide, that looking at our total taxes this year with the proposed taxes for next year, the increase is $1,656,000 or 1.9%.
There's questions?
Questions? Sure.
Thanks for the presentation, good job. So, just a couple of things. The maximum permitted budget, the $94.6 million,
Right.
how much of an increase is that over last year's budget? Do you know?
It's shade under 2%
In dollars?
in dollars.
No, in dollars. How many dollars is it?
Oh, about 1.7.
Okay.
million.
And so, and we obviously have lots of contractual obligations that we're
Right.
already committed to.
Right.
So if we started from, just from ground zero, what are, do you know what the dollars of our contractual
It's a tax.
obligation increases are year over year?
Are you talking salaries?
Well,
or-
yeah, I don't know what else we have that's contractual, but let's say with salaries. So before anything happens, we know that we've got X% increase in salaries. Do we
Right.
know what the total dollars of that increase is?
Right, that basically is on that slide. It's the,
Or the-
some of that is estimated, and some of it is contractual. So you're looking for the...
I'm just looking for the contractual. If we had
Contractual
$100
piece-
and we knew 3%
Contractual piece is
increase.
about 1.5 million.
Okay, so we've got, before we start, we've got $1.5 million that we're obligated to increase our budget, and we're suggesting that right now, we're gonna spend 1.8 million more.
Total, right.
Okay. So somewhere along the line, we had to come up with either cost reductions or additional revenues, $300,000 to get that increase.
Or decreases in other line...
Decreases in
line-
expenses,
other
sure.
lines, Right,
Okay, so $1.5 million before we start.
right.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a question on the technology piece. I'm wondering, just because it's such a large number, and there has been so much discussion regarding technology, both internally and externally, about things that are happening, if we will see sort of what that entails specifically. Will that be part of the discussion, the
Yes.
technology discussion of?
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, then at the next meeting, as was mentioned, the last Tuesday in February, on the 28th, there is a presentation on technology, and that'll be included.
So we'll see, so where that, some of that spending
Correct.
is
Right.
going. Okay.
So I just comment, just so the full board knows, that the Finance Committee met earlier last week and went through with Dr. Dolan and Vince the various components of the budget, and I think had a good conversation about what we would propose for the maximum proposed budget. And this certainly reflects that conversation. We felt we were able to live with a 1.9% increase for purposes of this version of the budget. So that felt pretty good, and we felt like we didn't have to look to major program cuts or other things. And it was, as Vince pointed out, the calendar, just sort of at a more detailed level. From our budgeting perspective, that started at each of the schools, not with the board members, but with Dr. Dolan and Vince talking to each of the principals about their needs. As I took away from the conversation, sort of discussing how they could stay where they are and be creative and put together a good budget.
I would certainly echo that. As anyone who's followed the budget discussions over the last few years, we've had a number of cuts, and the only way to accomplish that without harming the education was to have all the adults, both the administrators and the parents and the board, focus on what can we do, what can we cut that's not going to harm the students. And those efforts and those discussions have stayed with administrators, and our discussions with each and every one of the administrators and supervisors, they would bring comments to us also about ways that we could save money, either utilizing technology more efficiently, existing technology to do a lot of the organization work we have to do, little tricks they've found to make the money go a little bit further in their buildings. The focus is on that, being able to share staff. So it's something we've worked on a lot over the last few years. A number of the cuts we made, a number of the efforts we made to contain costs really are bearing fruit, which is making, so far making this budget one where, the last few years I've been up here and I've been announcing what cuts there were going to be, what programs we couldn't have, what offerings we had to cut. And as of now, as in our development of the budget, that doesn't appear to be the case. And I think some of that is the cost containments and the more long-range planning that we've been trying to do.
Anyone else? So we're not asking for a vote tonight. We are educational, and we'll come back in 2 weeks and vote. All right, thank you. So with that, I would ask the board to approve the minutes of the board meetings held on January 24th, 2012, and the private session minutes of the meeting held on January 24th, 2012.
I second.
Vince, you want a roll call or just a...
No, I want to comment.
Oh, comment.
Thank you. I would like the minutes amended, and I have been told that they can be amended tonight and approved. But I would like the long-range planning report to be entered into the minutes. As I had reported at this meeting, progress on the district enrollment study report was being made. Mrs. Korecki has been sending data to our consultant.
Very good.
Thank you.
The voice votes.
All in favor as amended?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing no one? We'll go to personnel. Jane?
Okay, I would like to ask for the board's approval of personnel items number 1 through 18.
Second.
A second.
Discussion?
Discussion,
Questions?
questions?
All right. Vince?
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
Mr. Matesi?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Kerstad?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
All right. We then go to facilities. Jane?
Facilities will be meeting on Thursday, and we will try to be very thorough and efficient, since it looks like finance will be utilizing March fairly well. We'll get it all done.
All right. Thank you. Long-range planning. Jenny?
Just an update that we continue to send information to our consultant working on our enrollment projection report. We have given information regarding contacts in the district, real estate agent, municipal government officials, so that we're hopeful that we're on schedule. Data collection has gone well, and now it's just a matter of waiting for some kind of feedback.
Very good. Policies, Roseanne?
Policies. I would like to ask the board to affirm the superintendent's decision on HIB incidents 12T02, 12R06, 12HS14, 12E08, and 12E10 for the reasons set forth therein.
Second. Do we have to second it?
Yeah.
Jenny?
Oh,
Do it quietly.
Quiet second.
Roll call?
Roll call.
Okay. Mrs. Kerstad?
Yes.
Mrs. Clancy?
yes.
Mr. Matesi?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
I would also like to bring it to the board's attention and to the public's attention that the 2012-2013 calendar had a mistake. We had Hanukkah as December 21st, which was last year's Hanukkah, so that has been changed to show December 9th, which is the first day of Hanukkah, and that is on the new calendar online. We don't need to approve that, right?
No, it didn't change any of the days students are attending, just it was noted on the
It was
wrong day.
noted on the calendar the wrong day.
And it's now corrected, right?
And now I would like to draw the board's attention to the two calendars that were in your packet. The policy committee met and we reviewed a few different scenarios, let's say, and we came to these two that we would like to present to you, just to name some, just to put out some highlights about the differences. Draft 1, school begins for students on September 9th. In draft 2, school begins for students September 3rd. So that is a major difference. The December vacation on draft 1 begins Tuesday, December 24th. So students would be in school for that Monday, the 23rd. The second draft has December vacation beginning Monday, the 23rd. So we have given families possibly the opportunity to go away on vacation the Friday before or the Saturday before, so their children would not be missing the Monday. However, take into consideration that in that draft, the students will be coming to school on September 3rd, which is the middle of the week. So they'd come to school for 2 days, and then they'd be out for 2 days for the Jewish holidays. So those are some of the trade-off, the pros and cons that we get. Also, on draft 1, the February 3rd, in February for President's Weekend, there's a 3-day weekend, which would be Monday, February 17th. And in the second draft, there would be a 4-day weekend. The April vacation stays the same,
Graduation stays the same.
and the graduation date stays the same for June 19th. So the major changes are the start dates. The Monday before December vacation, you either come to school or that begins the vacation, and then you either get a 3-day weekend or a 4-day weekend in February. These 2 calendars will be on the website, yes?
Yes.
For the public to take a look at and to email their preferences or concerns about the different calendars. Does anybody have comments now or questions?
Go.
So 2 questions. My first question would be for draft 2, with the start date of Tuesday the 3rd. When would orientations be held for students, freshmen, incoming middle school,
Right.
elementary
Right.
schools, all of those?
Right, since the day before that start is
If-
Labor Day,
yeah.
then the orientations would have to be the week before Labor Day.
So that Friday.
I don't know, it's in service.
Oh. So that might be something to, that would be important.
Right.
To think about, yeah. And then my other question for draft number 1, with the start date on the 9th, I guess I would be curious about how that would impact our athletics program, because a lot of training runs and camps run, and sometimes the games start early, so I'm just wondering if that would have any sort of impact, having that later start date.
Right, and actually, we in previous years where we've had the holidays early in the year, we had chosen to have a part of a week.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to the athletics because I don't remember us starting as
That
late
was-
as that.
yeah.
Other districts have, I have to say.
Right, yeah, I know that year it was very divided.
Right.
Because we had 1 day of school, I think, didn't we? That year? Was it just Wednesday? Or was it Tuesday and Wednesday?
I believe it was Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay, so maybe we might know what we did for the orientations. I just can't remember.
I actually think that year maybe it was Wednesday and Thursday, and you only had to be off on Friday. So the
okay.
orientations could be Tuesday. It was
Okay.
just a little bit different.
Okay, all right.
So I would actually have the same question for number 1. When would the orientations be if we just start class on Monday?
3rd or 4th,
Oh, they'd be on the 3rd and the 4th?
or the 4th.
Yeah, that's right. Rosh Hashanah's
Right,
the 5th
yeah.
and 6th.
Yeah. Well,
Likely
one-
the 3rd, because in service is the 4th.
Right.
Was there any discussion about January 2nd and 3rd and doing anything about those days, since January 1st falls on a Wednesday?
God.
Oh, I thought about that.
What do you think, we're in college?
I thought
Just
about that.
throwing it out there, and,
I did
you know,
think about that.
couple more
but
days of
it didn't
skiing.
seem to work.
Right.
And that seems like the longest amount of time that we have off all
It would be like a private school.
Where are you going this year, Rich?
I don't know. I don't know what the conditions will be in 2 years. but Just
That
figured I'd
would bring
ask.
graduation to
July 4th weekend.
to the tail end of the last week in June. So we didn't think it.
And we've definitely heard from parents that they would rather not go that long.
But I did think of it, Tom.
Okay, just asked if it was thought of, that's all.
Just a couple thoughts on the orientation piece, just more specifically, I know, at least I think I recall that in past years, there's been comments that the teachers like it the immediate day before. So not broken up by a weekend, not the next week. So I think one thing, I don't think we can accommodate that in this.
No.
But it is one thing to put on the balance as you're making a list of the pros and cons. The other was
Doesn't happen.
on the version 2, the 3rd and 4th, being in the middle of the week. I know we did do that recently, and I'd be interested to know, for lack of better words, were they 2 unproductive days of school? I don't know the answer to that, but
I did get feedback, because we were definitely concerned about that, having 2 days, and then, again, I believe it was, we had, the students came to school on Wednesday and Thursday, and they were off on Friday. I think that was the case. And there was a concern regarding that. But actually, the feedback I received from the teachers, because when I met with my teacher liaison group, I specifically asked it, was they were surprised. What they actually did was really focus on getting the basics down during those first 2 days, and then they were able to hit the ground running on that Monday and work through. So I think a lot of that was the feedback I received. Teachers were concerned about it, but it turned out to be fine that year.
okay, good.
The basics in this case being routines,
Right.
getting to know each other, building a community,
Right.
those kinds of
All right, good.
Thank
Classroom
you.
rules.
Yes.
The other, just the final point is in version 1, the December 23rd. Was there any other day that you could work with to get that? No?
What, one of the, another constraint is that graduation cannot be on a Friday. So, which was my thought initially, well, let's just have graduation on the 20th. But we don't have graduation on Friday because of Shabbat, and any Jewish students we have who celebrate Shabbat would not be able to attend their own graduation.
I guess just along those lines, would it be possible in version 1, if, that looked like it seemed to be the better option, could that be a half a day and be considered?
I'm sorry, which day?
The 23rd, sorry, going
Oh, the
back to the
23rd.
December 23rd, if that were to become an option.
Could be.
Just to give
It
it a
is
little bit.
would be a contact day.
It would be.
Just a thought to
It
consider.
would. I certainly wouldn't be promising that would be the most focused instructional day.
Well-
But you could consider that, yes, absolutely.
Just something to bat around. Sorry, I just have one more thing. Just, off the top of my head of comparing the two versions, other than my concerns about orientation, I would just note also in a pro in my mind is that having the additional day in February is important. I'm a firm believer in mental health breaks, and sometimes those winter months, not this year, but in other years, can be kind of taxing, not only mentally but physically. When a lot of illness is going around, it's sometimes a good time to air out the buildings, and so that's one of the things that I liked about that calendar.
About two.
About 2,
That's a good
yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
The policy committee, which I sat in on for this discussion, also raised the point that many families prefer an earlier start in September, as in version 2. Many families who have dual working spouses need to set up their childcare and are ready to get the school year underway when September starts.
That's a good point. When the year where we started and only had a few days 1 week, and then we had to break, and a number of districts around us started later, they didn't do what we did. And I heard that from parents from other towns, that they would have liked to have started early. So it'd be good to have the input from parents actually as to which one the majority of parents think is more beneficial.
Anything else?
In the past, we have had graduation on Monday, the 23rd. So if we were looking on version number 1 to plug in a day to give the whole week of Christmas off, I mean, that might be something to consider, because we have done that.
You have another half day on Friday?
No, we'd have off on, well, maybe we'd have,
No, you have a full day.
we'd have a full day on the
18th would be
18th.
full,
Okay, then we'll do
19th,
two and a
20
half.
half.
Okay.
Right.
23rd, and then you'd either have the 23rd or the 14th in February.
Right.
Yeah, I mean.
All right, well, we certainly,
Just sorry.
yeah, go.
One more question. Is Hanukkah November 27th?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we did check that one, because we all questioned that one, actually, and we went back and checked it.
It's early.
Wow. Yeah, okay. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you to the policy committee for getting ahead of this one. It sounds odd to be talking 2 years ahead
Yeah.
on the calendar, but it really does impact people's schedules, believe it or not, this far out.
Do we want to put the third option that Ann just brought up?
I wouldn't go crazy with it. I think people
No?
hear the comments and can give feedback
Okay.
on any version, so probably just stick with your 1 and 2.
Okay. Okay. And now I'd like to give you an update on what the policy committee has been working on. We discussed in policies about putting all of our policies up on the website, and we are looking to at least get the policies that have been reviewed within the last 5 years up on the website, and as we review them, continue to put them up, because they are public documents and they are accessible to the public at the district office, but sometimes it's hard for people to get to the district office, so we will be working on getting all of our policies on the website. So I just wanted the public and the board to know that we, on the policy committee, are committed to doing that, and we have begun to do that. We are also aggressively diving into reviewing all of our over 500 policies to ensure that they are up to date, still relevant, and are really meeting the needs of the district, and so we can more efficiently and effectively run. That's all.
All right, thank you. Curriculum, instruction, and programs, Ann.
I would ask the board to approve for final reading the following curricula under Fine Arts: Computer Graphic Design 1 and 2, Crafts Exploration, Ceramics, World Craft Sampler, and under Mathematics, Elementary Mathematics, which we discussed a month ago. Possible.
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion, questions? Roll call.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
Mr. Matesic?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Kerstad?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
All right, that takes us to finance. I'd ask the board to consider finance motions 1 through 10. Thank you. I'd like to just note item 4, a financial gift from the Tamaqua PTO for an iPad 2 to Tamaqua School. And item number 5, a financial gift from Deborah Thompson to Tamaqua Elementary School, specifically for their gardens. So we thank you very much for those gifts. Any comments or questions on the motions?
Mr. Matesic?
Yes.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Mrs. Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman?
Yes.
Ms. Kerstad?
Yes.
Mrs. Lights?
Yes.
Mr. Slater?
Yes.
I'd ask the board to note the notes for the record. And then we'll go to legislation. Ann.
I just wanted to say that we're meeting Monday to discuss the proposed 10-year reform bill in the Senate and the Assembly. So we'll give an update on that the next time we meet.
All right, very good. Unfinished business. New business. Ad hoc committee reports.
I'd just like to add that, once again, we'll be presenting our technology report on the 28th. We continue to meet sometimes bi-weekly and are really looking forward to presenting what we've been working on the last few months.
Very good. Any other ad hoc committee reports? Liaison reports. Ginny,
As always.
as always.
As always. I attended quite a few meetings since the last board meeting. January 25th, I attended New Jersey School Board's Union County Association, and we heard from Director of New Jersey School Board Association Governmental Relations, Mike Vrensick. He spoke about, among other things, 2% tax levy cap, pension and health benefit reform, anti-bullying legislation, criminal history background checks, school board elections. Although I find these meetings informative, they're not necessarily conclusive. There's speculation, and it's somewhat frustrating because there is ongoing dialogue without resolution for these issues as we go through day to day. And while it brings the topics into the forefront of conversation, it's not always clarifying to know where we're going to end up. Although I'm happy to report that I thought the meeting was well attended, and so I will hopefully continue to be able to go. On February 1st, I attended Garden State Coalition of Schools meeting, and that meeting brought a presentation by Brian Osborne, who is the chair of Teacher Effectiveness and the Evaluation Committee of the state. It was a lively discussion with a number of superintendents participating regarding the what's happening with the Department of Education's evaluation of teacher effectiveness and teacher performance evaluations. You know, there are 4 models that are being looked at by the state committee, and there is a pilot of 12 districts.
At least 12, yeah.
12 or so districts in place right now, and these districts have been asked to take a look at one or more of these teacher evaluation models to try to see how they work within the district. The effort has not been well funded. There are many concerns moving forward regarding the available time and capacity of administrators and teachers to understand the implications that are within these evaluation systems. The fact that the anticipated outcome is incorporating 50% of teacher evaluations as student achievement outcomes. And the understanding that while that is not, that student effectiveness is not necessarily a research-based outcome of effective instruction. So it was, as I said, a very lively discussion. Many superintendents were quite concerned about the impact to districts. I know that we have been told that the Union County Executive County Superintendent suggested that some monies be put in our budget for accommodating a new evaluation system, although the thinking at this meeting was that the state would delay their expected rollout time and that they would add another year to their piloting of the evaluation systems that they're looking at, because they don't have definitive results and they haven't been able to get their data system in place, and the evaluation is so closely tied to data analysis of student test outcomes. So again, the conversation raised consciousness to the topic, but is not conclusive at this point, and it's, as always, stirring up great concern. One of the concerns is that since the New Jersey's waiver that was requested of the federal government for No Child Left Behind is predicated on the ability of New Jersey to put in place teacher effectiveness evaluations based on a new evaluation system and using student outcome, that there will be federal pressure on the state and state pressure on the districts to embrace and move forward more quickly with a teacher evaluation system. However, this group felt that although those pressures are in place, that school districts were also pushing back with pressures to not rush forward, and because the data systems that the Department of Education, state-level Department of Education had promised have not been in place yet, so that more conclusive analysis of these performance evaluation systems can't be accomplished. That evening I attended Union County Ed Services Commission Board of Directors meeting, and since that is a Union County group of board representatives, we had a lively discussion for a few minutes about whether or not different districts that were represented at the table were going to be passing this resolution to move the election date from April to November. And there were a number of groups who had already moved their election date, but for the most part, groups like our district had introduced the topic and then wanted to wait until the public had time to respond to learning a little bit more about the implications of the law. And finally, on February 2nd, I attended the PTO President's meeting. And and I heard a very interesting presentation by PTC Tech Committee of the survey of results of elementary and intermediate teachers regarding their use of technology in their classrooms, the status of their technology, their wishes, and projections of what they thought their students would like. And today I sent you all the data from those survey results.
All right, thank you.
That's it.
Jane?
I guess first I should say thank you, Jenny,
Yeah,
for attending all those meetings on our behalf and in keeping us informed.
absolutely.
I attended the Westfield Recreation Commission meeting last night, and two topics I would like to highlight. During the public portion of the meeting, several members of the committee, of the public, came out to make a request to the Rec Commission to create an ordinance to have the parks be smoke-free. Evidently, there is a Smoke-Free Air Act in existence in New Jersey where all school property is smoke-free, as well as any areas that we use. So if you're attending a school event off of school property, it's still considered to fall under that Smoke-Free Act. So say a baseball game at Tamaulipas or something like that, which I actually didn't know, so I think that was, yeah, so.
What about at Memorial?
Memorial Pool, the complex itself inside is considered, they have already created that to be a smoke-free environment, but the park is not. Unless, a softball game was going on, a school-sponsored event, that would be, so, any member of the public would be able to sort of remind anyone if that, were to be the case. So it was well received by the commission. They are going to turn it over to their Parks and Commission Committee for discussion. I think the group had also talked to the Board of Health, and, they brought someone from a group called GASP, which I apologize, I didn't get what it stood for, but he was representing, a larger umbrella group to sort of help coordinate any kind of efforts that they might make to do that. And then just a quick update on Jefferson. Mr. Kaufman indicated that they are still waiting for the ground to freeze in order to get. It's very frustrating because they are ready to make the move of doing the repairs to the sewer drain, but when it's muddy or wet, it just makes it impossible. So as soon as they have an opportunity, they will get in there. And then after that, we kind of talked a little bit about that it might be a good idea for us to kind of see what happens after that, after we do get some rain and have some impact, to see how much of an impact that problem was creating on the field. And then we will go into discussion with them in facilities and see what work we can get done with that grant money from the Union County.
Great,
And that's about it.
thank you. Any other liaison reports? All right, seeing none, I would like to recognize the public for questions and/or comments. You just state your name and address, please.
Sure. My name is Nancy Murray. I reside at 924 Prospect Street. I was born and raised in Westfield. I'm a mother of 3 children and have been involved in the school system for years and years and years. And I'm here because I first want to say I really want to comment on my dissatisfaction of the decision that you all made to retain the book, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. This actually is something that I have a big problem with. I'm not here to convince you that this is inappropriate for a 9th grader, which I completely think it is. I believe that we can do better. This was brought to my attention because a child was brave enough to go to his parent and say, I don't think that you would agree with me reading this. And so, as a parent and also a concerned citizen of this community, I feel it's very important that I'm here. I'm also not going to read from this novel because I don't need to prove its vulgarity or its lack of respect for common decency, but I know that we can do better. I don't care that the character is humorous or that the character overcomes poverty, alcoholism, and the perils of living in a reservation. It doesn't make it okay for me, and it does not make it okay for my child to read. I know that we can do better. So this now poses questions for me to move on. And I have more questions for you, questions that I feel were not answered. So what I would like to know is, from a letter from Dr. Dolan, it was indicated to me that this book was approved by a team of teachers. And I could be wrong, but I thought that there is a curriculum that is approved by the board. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to ask questions. I want to learn. I want to know. Because I'm not just going to sit back and let these things keep festering on. From my research, what I found out was that this novel was not a required reading when it was first brought in to the curriculum. It was one of 3 alternative readings. Then I found out that in 2010, a teacher actually photocopied a section of the novel to be read by the students to, again, address racism, the difficulties that this character was dealing with self-identity and how to be accepted into a new environment, which I can understand that. As long as the other parts of this novel that I believe are peppered with vulgarity and just a lack of common decency, that's the only way that I can describe it to you. So where I am here tonight is that I would like some answers to how does this all work? How do we go forward? How do teachers, when I research, even this year, how are some teachers teaching this book and others not teaching this book? Is there not a common curriculum that we all know about? I'm not going to point fingers at who knew about it, who didn't know about it, but I need to move forward. I have a child coming into 9th grade. I don't have a 9th grader. I have someone coming in. and I am extremely concerned. So I want to know how I can go forward trusting the standards. How does a book become approved? How do all the teachers move on with their curriculum? Do teachers approve these books? Or do the teachers, as I understand, meet, they present what they would like to teach, it is then presented to you as a board, and there is a set curriculum made? But I may be mistaken.
So I was just going to say, I think what would be helpful to me, because I think you just said a lot of different things.
Okay?
What would be helpful to me, Dr. Dolan, if you could you outline maybe in this fashion, how is the curriculum, and I'm not asking for half an hour of detail, just maybe start at a high level, we could drill down. How is the curriculum established? So what is your role, what is this board's role? What is, how is it that, I believe you referred to it as alternative reading, how is it that a book that is not specifically on the curriculum list, how is that introduced into a classroom? Sort of how does that work with the teachers? And then if you could go into, for other people listening as well, the process to vet, these kind of valid concerns.
Right. So first of all, there's curriculum, and then there are the books and/or materials that are used, and they're separate. They're certainly related, but they're separate. So the curriculum process first, starting with whatever the standards are that are accepted. At this point, most of those standards are called Common Core standards, but whatever the current standards are, either nationally or statewide, as well as the different professional organizations, starting with the current ones, which are always evolving. Committees of teachers meet with supervisors to both review existing curriculum and determine, both from looking at test scores, et cetera, do we think this has been effective, or have we identified areas of concern with current curriculum? And then looking at the most recent standards, and they work on developing a curriculum that lists that gives a summary of, what's the objective of the course overall. And then outlines all the objectives of what you want the students to attain during the course of that course, whether it's a half-year course, a full-year course. They're all outlined like that. That's the basic structure. I didn't give you all the pieces, but that's the basic structure, so that the students are going to reach the objectives, the educational objectives. The curriculum doesn't list what books you're going to use, because you write the curriculum first. You don't want to pick up a textbook that some company put together and just say, that's it, we're just going to read the book. That's not the way you develop a good class, a worthwhile class.
Well, in reference to English, though, there is no actual book. There are novels, which is what reinforces these themes. So why don't we pertain specifically to English so that,
Sure.
let's say the novels.
So you're right. So English is a very specific issue, because you identify what are the objectives you want, and then the teachers work together also, and it's supervised by the then supervisor in the area, following a guideline as to what should be looked for, making sure it's linked to the objectives, and then that's agreed upon. Now, the books, we have several hundred books that are used by English teachers just at the high school. So they're not all teaching the same book at the same time, in the same course. The books reach the objectives, but they're not all teaching the same books. That's true. That's been true. It's not a new phenomenon.
So what if a teacher comes upon something that they would like to introduce, and clearly this book has been used in various ways? It was photocopied, it was an alternative reading, and now it has become a required reading. When it became a required reading, it was not handed out. The parents had to go and purchase this book. Why would that be?
That should not have been the case. Yeah, I know it happened. You're absolutely right, it did, but that should not have been the case. We've already worked to address that, because you're absolutely right, that part is not appropriate. If we're saying that the entire class should read something, we should not be asking the parents to buy that.
Now, and what exactly are, so you're saying that the standards are based from a state point of view. Is that correct? The standards of what, let's get
No,
to
I'm
the,
sorry,
let's,
they're the basics.
Okay.
You have to address those, okay? But no, do we take them and just, take them as an entity and plop them in and not put any of our own standards on top of that? No, we don't. But that has to be where we start. More and more, actually, that is the requirement in education. It used to be the state standards were very loose and you didn't have things like national standards, but there has been a whole movement over the recent years, and so now there are even national standards, which haven't been the case before. But we don't take them just like that and plop it in and say that's what we want for Westfield.
okay, so if we cut to the chase specifically about this novel, what are our standards going forward when there are harsh language, vulgarities? I understand that there is a sweet message at the end. The character is humorous. But many concerned parents, some here, some not here, some who had no idea that there was sensitive material inside this book, that after finding out that there was sensitive material, was very upset about it. I know you received letters concerning this. But where do we go as parents in terms of standards? It concerns me greatly. What are my rights? I mean, I know I'm covering a lot of things, and that will be the next question, but what are my rights as a parent in terms of next year? I do not want my son reading this book. So I understand that there is an alternative reading, but why, if there is concern, why not take the approach, it goes into many levels of concern for me. If you look in a gym of ninth graders, there are varying ages of maturity. There are some kids that have gone through puberty. There are some kids that have not.
It's a huge range.
Okay? Some kids are, ready to handle the subject of masturbation. Others are not. Okay? I don't think in ninth grade that certain subject matters, I'm not saying that this book should be banned, that it should be removed from the library. I am saying that there has to be some sensitivity to age appropriateness. I think also just even understanding some of these concepts are going over their head, or disturbing them, or feeling like, as one of the parents wrote me a note, they had to hide the book while they were reading it. This poses a lot of other questions. Yes, you all can see through. You all can pass through the pages and get the bigger picture that, he strives, and it's all about friendships and, and getting above all the odds. You see the humor. But not all kids are at the age where they can be mature enough to rise above that.
So first of all, I certainly couldn't agree more. I mean, and you gave a good example. If you look in the gym and just watch the students, you can see what a wide range that is in ninth grade, no question. And so, honestly, the teachers who are reviewing the materials are familiar with the age level and they're familiar with the ranges, so they really do try to take that into consideration. Having said that, in some cases, parents do have questions about books that are chosen or materials that are chosen, and that is so a couple of different things. Because sometimes it's just an issue regarding, it could be one child in the class, but what if that, for whatever reason, whatever's in that child's history, there's one reason why that child, it's not good for, some book, some material is not good for that child. So first of all, in an instance like that, a parent can contact the teacher, actually a high school student can contact the teacher also, and say that this is not appropriate and can be given something, an alternative. That's one, if it's just a little bit. But when there is a formal complaint, as there was in this case, and it was more than one parent, there is a policy, because yes, we have a procedure for teachers to review, and the teachers know the age level of their students, et cetera, and there is a process that they follow. We'd all like to be perfect and blameless and all of that, but we have a policy for review in case we don't get that right, in case our judgment wasn't accurate. So we followed the policy for that, the policy which we've used in other cases over the years. It's not a brand new policy, where we have a committee that is made up of people who have not been involved in selecting the book, who who represent various segments of the community, including parents. The policy specifically says parents should be included on it.
One parent, one parent.
One parent. I went out of my way to make sure that there were 3 people who had children in the high school on that committee, because there are different categories, and I wanted it to be fair, honestly. I mean,
But what if parents disagree? That's where I am. I understand that you know, unanimously think that this is a value. What do parents...
So 2 points, I would say. One is the parents can go to the teacher and say, I don't want my child using that book.
But what about the parents that did not know? See, this is where I run into the problem. I understand that, and that's what I am going to do going on. I know what this is about. I know that now I will pay close attention to, you know, what is being given. But what about the parents who did not know what was inside that book? See, that is what concerns me. You know, the child that is hiding the book from their parents, you know, the one child who is brave enough to go to the parent and say, you know, I don't think this is really something that you want me to read. But what about the rest of them, and the parents don't know?
So what would probably be helpful, I've already heard from a few parents, if there is a parent who has a story that they haven't told about their own child, they can send that to me. And then that's information that can go to the teachers, and that's part of a judgment then. Because from what we've, you know, again, we do listen, and we understand that students are different, and we understand that parents have different views, and we honestly try to respect that. And the whole policy is really, you know, to give a whole fresh set of eyes, you know, a whole fresh set of eyes to read it and make a determination on it. And we took that very seriously. So if there is anybody else who has their own personal story with their child, maybe if you're telling me there's a parent who didn't know until afterwards, if they didn't share that already, share that, and then that could be reviewed. As you noted yourself, there are reasons why the book was chosen. There are good things in the book that do meet the standards, and as you also said, and there is language in that book, and there's language in other books as well. Unfortunately, that's not particularly a new topic. But if there are other parents, then they can write also to me, and I'll make sure that it goes to the department, and that's part of what's reviewed.
Okay, I don't want to take up too much time because I know that there's other people who would like to speak. But I do want to know, so in terms of moving on, let's say for next year, there is a list of set novels that have been approved by the board that is part of the curriculum. Is that correct? That would be,
There's a
no.
list of books that are used for the various levels of the English classes. Yes.
Okay, that the public can receive to see what is on that list. So is there any, and so anything else that is in addition to that, there's no way of knowing that prior to our kid walking into that class. Is that true?
In addition to that.
You were talking about that there are other materials and reading materials that the teacher can bring to the table.
Well, certainly an English teacher, if they've been trying to, I think that is true, if I understand the question, because, for example, if they've been trying to really express a writing style or something like that, and the students didn't happen to, didn't seem as though the class understood it, they may bring in a poem or another example, and they're not going to send that to parents beforehand.
No, not parents. I'm saying have it approved, have it looked at. Is there a set policy for all things that are taught in the classroom? Do you know what I'm saying? Is there a set curriculum that is approved by the board for, let's say, English 1?
There's a set curriculum.
Of novels, I'm saying.
The novels are not the curriculum.
Not, right.
But you said that, is there a list? And yes, there is a list of the books.
So can I ask it this way? So I have a daughter going in 9th grade next year, so maybe that's relevant. If I asked you for a list of potential novels that she might have in English, does that exist? Is that something you could give me?
Yes.
Okay. And now knowing that this particular book has raised issues, and it's a book we're continuing with, is there any merit to the notion that the parents of the students in the class using this book would get a letter that this book is in the curriculum? I don't know if that's a good idea, bad idea, but I think that's part of what you're asking. Like,
Yeah.
what would you do going forward? and maybe you can't answer that right now, but has anything like that been done?
I believe if there was a notification saying that there was sensitive material in this, there could have been a conversation had with parents, with their children, and if a child had some issue, whether, we don't know what every child is dealing with, they could have come forward, but after the fact, it's too late. You know, it's damage is done for that child, or a parent lost that opportunity to have a conversation. So, you know, and I'm saying in this particular instance, I think you would all agree that it was a little bit, it was definitely out of the ordinary in terms of its language. I mean, I don't think you would read through it and say, oh, you know, there's nothing to this, you know. So,
So I'm actually trying to scroll through my memory if I can think of another example where we sent home a letter beforehand. My memory's not coming up with one of those. It doesn't mean it didn't happen, but...
well, a perfect example for me would be health class. When a subject was being brought up,
that's true.
okay, you would get a note at home. It would say if you are interested in reviewing the materials or having a discussion, or if you would opt out, this is your choice as a parent. That is the example that I can come up with.
That's absolutely true. And I'm not saying we wouldn't do it. What I'm saying is I probably should give it more than 2 seconds of thought, because I could see somebody else coming up and saying, why was my child in whatever grade in high school taught about genocide, and I didn't know it ahead of time because they're going to be traumatized by that. And so I guess, you know, without more than 2 minutes of thinking about it, I'd like to think it through. How many letters would we be sending home beforehand? So I'm not saying no at all. I'm saying we can certainly consider it, but I would not want to promise here and now that on this one particular book we're going to send home a letter, and then somebody else comes up and says,
Right.
why didn't you send home this letter? But
And my last comment, because I know that, you know, I don't want to take up the whole time, but I would like to say that I think it's very important, any of these topics, that they're talked about in a mature, intelligent way. I think we're smarter than that here as a community. I think we can do better than this. I know we can. And I am sure if you wanted to give me the job of it, I could find alternative readings that would be equally as impressive with plot, humor, and overcoming adversity. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Leslie Barnacle.
Would you mind coming up to the front?
Sure,
Thanks.
sure. Good evening, everyone. I know you're probably tired and want to go home, but I just feel compelled to speak. My name is Leslie Barmakian. I have 3 boys, one of whom is going to be entering 9th grade, just as Nancy's. The best way for me to comment, I guess, is to say there's only one chance to make a first impression. And my concern is that our entering freshmen are going to have a really bad impression of our wonderful high school. This book is not what I would think should be their first impression of English 1 in 9th grade. I proudly thumbed through the report card that our school got last week in the Star Ledger, pleased to see that we were rated, I believe, if my memory serves me, the highest, got the highest marks for math and reading in Union County. This is an embarrassment to me. I don't consider myself an overly sensitive person. I, too, am not going to go into the vulgarities because it's embarrassing and it would be lowering myself. I want to say, too, that I do understand the value of teaching over the values of overcoming adversity, wonderful values that this author was trying to portray, and albeit through a unique perspective of a 14-year-old child who perhaps experienced it firsthand. However, this book is completely inappropriate, I think, not only for 9th grade, but for any grade in the English department of Westfield High School. And these are my very basic reasons. Number 1, the vulgarities are distracting. They are so much an integral part of the language and the storytelling of the book that my concern is that children will become numb to it, much like they do violent video games, and it'll be accepted. they're tossed around here and there so flippantly that we have enough of that going on, hearing older siblings and other people that our children are exposed to of not great character. We don't need more of this. And I'm concerned that it'll become a habit. It's numbing, actually. The second reason is I feel that it doesn't teach the basics of critical analysis, interpretation, writing, and reading that I would expect my child would learn in the 9th grade. These kids come in wide-eyed. They are, most of them I would think, have a great respect for the education they're going to get when they enter high school. This is like Captain Underpants. It's ridiculous. You get distracted from the main point of the book. If someone finds value in this book and they feel compelled to teach it in their lesson or in their curriculum or in their class, my belief is that it should be an elective, an English elective, which perhaps covers the subject of style. This is a 14-year-old kind of rambling and heartfelt. It was kind of nice to see the perspective of this child. You feel the pain, you feel the emotion, but there's so many other resources out there that we could use to teach these things. So I feel that it's not appropriate as a basic core introduction to 9th grade English. More of an elective. It's to teach a stylistic approach to writing, perhaps, from this type of a young writer, maybe, if someone was interested in becoming a novelist. Also, many of the sexual habits and subject matters are, as Nancy said, are perhaps outside the range of a 14-year-old, of a 9th grader, 10th, 11th, or 12th grader. So much like, we have movie theaters that have, put ratings on movies to protect our children, I feel our kids need protection from this book, frankly. Why can't we have someone send a letter to the parents and say, this is the subject matter of this book. Here, take a read. We want your input. I think we should view it, we should even be more so that way as educators. The treatment of violence is too flippant. It's laughed at, it's joked, you become numb to it. The comments that are made, oh, they get bloodied every day from abuse, it's just war paint. I just was sickened by it, I get the point, but these kids might not get it. They might be offended, they might get scared, shooting your best friend, your dog, in the first chapter of the second chapter of the book, having the father do that, it's disgusting. And the last point about this book that I find inappropriate is that I think it was offensive to me that while the author was trying to expose the prejudices, stereotypes, or the difficulties or disparate treatment that this Indian culture was given, the author himself makes hugely prejudicial comments and statements. I suppose they're this, I suppose they're that. And our impressionable readers might take it as truth. Many times I found myself reading this and thinking the author was discriminating himself. So it kind of defeated the purpose in many instances, and it didn't make me sympathize with the author, so you kind of lost that point as well at times. I wanted to know, my question would be, what is the chain of command once this committee approves a book? Is there oversight by, you said, an outside supervisor? What type of person is that? Is it one person? Are they two people? And I believe that it should be, that's my question. And I believe there should be some process in place for parental review. I don't think this has to do with the peculiar stories of children that a parent might want to tell a teacher. I don't think it's a unique thing. I think that a reasonable mind could read this and be offended and say, in balance, do the positives outweigh the negatives? Do the negatives overtake the positives? And I would say absolutely. I'll just close with saying that this book does not represent the standards of Westfield High School. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Anna Githens. I live at 603 Elm Street. I would like to first ask Dr. Dolan if she has in fact suggested that there has been a mishandling of this book. And will you as a board do your best to prevent this from happening again? Because right now I feel like I don't trust the process, I don't trust our system, and I would like to regain that trust. For the record, I had a son go through 4 years and graduate Westfield High School last year. Although I've had some serious concerns, I have never been here to complain about anything before at Westfield High. And I, like many of you, I'm very busy attending to the needs of 3 teenage boys and going to graduate school full-time. However, I feel, as do many parents, this book is crossing a new line, a new threshold. And it can't be compared to any other previous controversial books because it is unique. And all books, like all children, are unique in themselves and must be assessed independently from each other. Since there is an author, a unique individual behind the writing of every book, which opens the question, why are educators today currently employing like a blanket assessment of all prepubescent teenagers in the classroom, like Nancy was talking about? How are they qualified to know if a child is equipped to handle certain subject matter? Additionally, what Nancy was asking is what are our standards? I don't think she was asking what are the core curriculum content standards. I think she meant what are our moral standards, meaning what do we consider common decency? What do we consider just too obscene, too profane, too vulgar, especially for a 14-year-old? And it appears from the passage of this book that we really don't have any of those moral standards. And just a little fact, childhood anxiety and depression has been on the rise since 1965, which I know 3 psychologists who attest to this statement. And many are calling this the age of anxiety. Maybe, we should all take a step back and think about what are we doing to these children. Maybe we're doing something wrong by exposing them to all kinds of mature subject matter way too young, way too early. And, regardless of the outcome of this book or the entertainment factor, it does employ what maybe you would call adult humor that I think goes over many of the kids' heads. It's hard, I think, at the ages we are now to wrap our brain around what it was like to be in a 14-year-old body with a 14-year-old mind, but that's what we're talking about here. So, I just want to know, should we as parents and taxpayers of this community, what should we expect going forward? There are a handful of concerned parents here right now, many of them here, and only a small fraction of the 9th grade is even aware of it. So can you imagine if the entire 9th grade, or better yet, the whole high school knew about this issue? So, and we had asked that they would be made aware of it, and as far as we know, nothing has gone out alerting the parents about this issue. We have, as parents, brought this to your attention in the hope that our opinion would be acknowledged and respected. And in terms of what Dr. Dolan said about writing in, 9th graders writing in about their concerns, I don't think I need to remind you that these kids are immature. Some of them can't put into words what they feel when they're reading a book. This is our responsibility. This is not their responsibility to determine what they should learn in a classroom. So, we have elected here to force feed a book that so many parents are objecting to, and of which many are not even aware. So, again, these children don't have the life experience, the intellect, or the acquired knowledge, or the maturity to make this determination. Although, from what I've heard, many of them are mature enough to call a spade, and have expressed their discomfort with this book. So, and from what I read in your letter to one of the parents, that the review of this book was rushed through the holidays out of respect for concerned parent, which I'm assuming was me. I did not want it to be rushed through a self-appointed committee so it can be retained and forced upon the kids. What I wanted was it to be removed from the hands of children as quickly as possible. That's what I meant by, hurrying the process. So,
Just to answer that briefly. Right, you're right, it was you. You had asked when you came to the board meeting in December, and I told you that I would rush it. But what I had to rush was the policy that exists, not something that doesn't exist. So that is what I did quickly, and I promised you I would, and that was the only point I was making regarding that, was that I made sure the policy moved very quickly. So that was all that was meant by that.
okay, I appreciate that. Okay, I don't want to take up any more time. Is anyone else?
Good evening. My name's David Crenshaw. I reside at 42 Fair Hill Road here in Westfield. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board. I also appreciate the very strong showing of a number of concerned parents. I'm glad that the board is hearing firsthand the feedback about this book entitled The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. What I would like to do this evening is to provide you some firsthand feedback, Dr. Dolan and the board, because I think it's important that you hear our perspective. Earlier this evening, I was struck about the thoughtful and detailed conversation on banners at the field. We heard thoughtful discussion about Westfield standards and guidelines and how to comply with what people would think appropriate. And that's not inconsistent with what we are seeking here as concerned parents, is what are the standards in Westfield? This goes much deeper than a football field or having a Dunkin' Donuts banner hanging on a stadium. Important concern, yes. Neighborhood impact, yes. Consider the impact in the classroom. So what I'm going to take a few moments to do is to say first again that we do have two children, one in 9th grade, the other coming up, will enter middle school next year. And we are disappointed and disagree with the board's decision to retain this book. From my perspective, we do not seek to ban the book. We're not about banning the book, but we do believe that the board and school teachers and administrators who are in positions of trust, including, for example, department chairs who are working directly with teachers to set standards in the classroom, have an obligation to be more inclusive and not so easily dismissive of legitimate concerns and questions about the literary value of a book and the standards that we set for ourselves, our children, and would hope are displayed in the community. I won't repeat many of the themes that have already been touched on this evening, but one theme was, as a possible solution, might this book be optional reading? Could it be an elective? A simple Google search would show that there are many options that a thoughtful process could take to arrive at a solution that factors in the concern raised by parents in the community. With respect to the book, it is our view that the book does not have literary merit and that the negatives outweigh the important messages and themes of struggle. My family is no stranger to struggle. Everyone has their own story, and I won't get into that here. But as one person said earlier, reasonable minds can differ. And clearly you're hearing from people who do have a different view than was decided by the committee. This book is ugly, hateful work that is replete with gratuitously vulgar and graphic material, with needlessly explicit and abundant sections on violent, sex, drugs, racist, anti-religious, and even misogynistic. Several people have said that they will not quote from the book. Well, I'm going to quote from the book. It's uncomfortable, but guess what? The students were forced to buy the book and read it in class. So here are some examples. Page 42, every white person should get smashed in the face. Page 64, and I realize this is a public record, and let me state very clearly, I do not agree with the use of these words, and I understand that there is a context, but the words matter. So here are the words. Page 64, Indians are living proof that buffalo. Page 225, I stick my in the girl trees.
So,
I hope that you are as uncomfortable as all of us are by the language in this
I could think
book.
of quite a few books that someone could stand up there and take comments out and read them, and that would be gratuitous. So if you feel the need to go on, maybe you should, but I really think there are a number of books. You could take parts of Shakespeare and you could read them. You could pick books from just about every decade. So, yeah, that is the case. That is the case, and you've proven your point by reading it. I don't know if you need to continue a litany. And it would be gratuitous if students were handed a sheet of paper with just those statements. It absolutely would be. But thought, honestly, was given to it. And you're right. You have a right to disagree. And I apologize that I interrupted you. You absolutely have a right to disagree, and it's fine that you're speaking, but I don't think we need to be gratuitous.
Well, Dr. Dolan, I appreciate your feedback, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm glad that I got your attention and to make a point. The language is frankly offensive. And I would also quote now, no more from the book, but to quote from the student handbook, page 21. Students shall not use foul, profane, abusive, derogatory, or demeaning language, including racial and ethnic remarks. The Code of Conduct, Policy and Regulation 5500, infractions, profane, offensive language, obscene, pornographic material, inappropriate contact, sexual misconduct, fighting, physical assault of students or staff, disruptive behavior. Each of those items are amongst the most highly penalized behaviors. And this book would fall into just about every one of those categories, whether you take the statements out of context or on the whole. And I would, again, repeat here for the record that I apologize to anyone for being uncomfortable with those remarks, but I think that it's important that we call a spade, and we know what the language is in the book. So that's the book. With respect to the classroom, I would like to make sure that the board knows that one of the assignments in the class was to write a diary entry in the first person, as if the student were a character in the book, or something to that extent. But the instructions to the student to the classroom was, don't use the same language as in the book. You're writing a first-person diary account of the book that was forced to go out and buy, but don't use that language. That, to me, suggests an inconsistency in logic or even other things that I won't go into, but I believe there's, at a minimum, an inconsistency here. Now, I would also say, at least with respect to the quality of instruction in the classroom, we have been pleased with the feedback of the teacher. I think the teacher herself is giving very constructive teaching to the students, which has not been the case in prior years. So Our concern is with the process. We believe the review process has not been transparent. We disagree on the merits of the decision, and what we would request is that the board consider options to make the book optional, not mandatory, and also to request a reconsideration by the board, having heard the new information and concern by the parents, to see what options there may be, and perhaps to consider the reconvening of a committee to fully consider the merits and how to best achieve the goals of the curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just add a comment to some of that. And without specifically addressing the book, I think there were one theme that sort of resonated through a few of the comments were that in one case the speaker didn't feel like her opinion was acknowledged or respected, and in another case, as we just heard, a comment that perhaps we were more thoughtful with banners than books, and then I guess the comment that you're glad you quoted from the book because you got our attention. So I think it's important to assure everybody that you had our attention. You had a thoughtful process, and I'll get to that in a second, but you absolutely had our attention. You had it the minute somebody came in, and I believe you stood right over here and raised your concern. It was after a meeting ended. We didn't have a discussion in it in that meeting. The meeting was over. But absolutely, the concern was heard. It was brought forward in a quick manner, and let's not confuse the word quick with not thoughtful. That was done at a request. I think it was a legitimate request, and I don't think we confused the request to be expedient with to somehow lacking in judgment or not going through the right thought process. So I think it's just important to take that away as well, and just sort of separate all of that from the ultimate decision, because I get it. You're not happy with the ultimate decision, and I'm glad you're here telling us that and speaking about it. But I got to tell you, it has nothing to do with the thoughtfulness or our appreciation of your opinions. That was all taken into account. And I think finally one of the things that doesn't really come through, and I'm not in the classroom, is a lot of the comments assume that our teachers, I guess, can't teach. I don't know. I'm not sure what the takeaway there is, but it is subject matter that, there were comments that, well, if we're talking about prejudice, then students may take away that that's the reality. And I think that assumes then that the teachers can't educate in a fashion that's effective. And I take the point that maybe this isn't the material they ought to be educating with, but I do want to I don't want to lose sight of that point. I mean, we have strong educators in Westfield, and regardless of this book or the results of any particular student in a particular class, I think results show that. I think it's important not to lose sight of that. So I don't want to get off subject, but there's just a lot of things that aren't coming through in the comments that I think are important. My takeaway is that if we made no changes in the process, maybe we can be more transparent about it. I don't know. That's certainly something I think we need to ask ourselves as a board. Roseanne, I'll ask you as head of policies. We need to think about that. I'm not saying there'll be changes, but we need to think about that. Dr. Dolan, I think it's fair that we ask what you think about what you had said before, which is, should we have any sort of notification to parents that are receiving this book? I'm not saying we should. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I think you ought to think about it. And I think along with that policy discussion can be the notion that what other paths could there be? We've decided we're keeping the book. Could it be an optional book? I don't know. I don't know what the choices are, but are there other considerations? That's all. Any other comments from the public?
Christine Russo. I live at 416 West Dudley. I also was raised in Westfield, went to the schools here. I would agree with you. I think we have a great education system and great teachers. My one concern would just be not about the prejudice piece, but about certain other aspects that were mentioned. I don't want teachers teaching my child that. I want that to come from the home. So while I agree with you on that, I disagree on the coarseness and those types of things. As far as hearing everybody, I only found out about the book 2 days ago because a friend was kind enough to inform me. Yet, and I'm an educator myself, so I get there are certain things within the classroom. But yet, when we wanted our budget to pass, there were budget bites all over the place all the time. Why is it that this, again, as other people have stated, is not being handled in the same manner? When we wanted our budget to pass, parents were informed all the time. There were all kinds of things about how we were being fiscally responsible, vote for the budget, but yet unless a friend had notified me, I would have had no clue that my son was going to be exposed to this book. And again, I would have to agree that we're shaping young minds here, and while we do count on our teachers, and we know that we hire the best teachers, as a teacher myself, I would not be comfortable teaching this. And I think it speaks that only some of the teachers chose this book to teach. So maybe we need to look at that as well. But definitely, I think there needs to be more communication, certainly for those coming in who are about to experience it. That needs to be addressed, just like we would with anything else. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Well, thank you again. With that, I'd ask that the board go into private session and approve the following resolutions. Resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purposes of discussing personnel, litigation, or negotiations, and be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practical. All in favor? Second, first, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, motion carries, and meeting adjourned.